Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Alien Protocols. Well, let's dive into some nuts and bolts. And this is a very uncomfortable area to get into, but it's a very important area. I always say when it comes to this phenomena and all of this information, I don't want just to validate my theories. I want to know the truth. And if that shatters illusions that I've been living under, then that's fine, because I want to know the truth. And I've said for a long time that my belief is that the vast majority of the visitors are peaceful. But there are cases where there have been indisputable damage to humans, and that getting near these craft and their propulsion systems and other things about them are very, very dangerous. And people may even be specifically targeted for ill effects. Now, there's plenty of cases of just the opposite. Travis Walton was hit with that beam, and then it's widely believed by him and others that he was taken on board to be healed and fixed after he was blasted. There's lots of cases that cross the borderline. But one thing is for sure, getting close to the field propulsion of these craft is very dangerous. And as you can see, this case right here, this one person died within 2 weeks of exposure. And a lot of these, there's some secret files, and these secret files talk about a bunch of soldiers and military personnel of different levels. There have even been soldiers stationed at specific locations outdoors to observe this possibility, and it happened, and they got tremendous exposure. These people have major symptoms. And one of the doctors said something like 20% of the patients that he treats dies within 7 years. That is a large percentage, something like that. But there are a lot of effects, and the effects are not just from electromagnetic field, but also other parts of the electromagnetic spectrum, extreme aspects like gamma rays. And so it's not just, high frequency millimeter waves, it's gamma rays as well. So there's a variety of ionizing and non-ionizing radiation that hits people associated with the perimeter of being near one of these craft. And something else that you can see in these brain scans here. Those white areas that you see have an interesting name. They're called UBOs, which are unidentified bright objects. I believe that is unidentified bright objects, or something. I think we'll get to it here in a minute, or unexplained bright objects, or something like that. But they're UBOs, and they don't really completely understand them. They believe they're associated with ionizing radiation. There's ionizing and non-ionizing combined in these incidents. So let's dive into some of this stuff, because this stuff takes us some really interesting places, gang. Really interesting places, and some places you wouldn't expect. So let's dive in. So Travis Walton was hit, and there's many cases, and some of this stuff is in the public record out there, that there is a program, and different people have been throughout history doing the medical research on UAP exposure cases. And it's not just the ones you know about. There's other doctors who've been doing this, and doctors in the Navy as well who are specializing in it. And ATIP had numerous cases of witnesses who had exposure. So a lot of different military professionals have had exposure, gang. And this says a lot. There's a lot of things going on here. A lot of different moving parts in this story. So they have determined that up to 1,500 feet can be dangerous. It's the field propulsion and gamma rays. They can damage the body and the brain. And there is even a speculation amongst a series of doctors that the gamma rays are just affecting the brain and not the body of some of these people. And so they believe, they're deducing that it might be intentional, that there's some sort of beamed radiation that's being fired at specifically the heads. And this may not make any sense at first, but when we get to the end of the story, it might just make sense. Okay, so this has been happening repeatedly, and this, if it proves to be correct and this theory is true, then we have to consider the possibility that these targetings of the brain with gamma radiation, a special type of gamma radiation, that is predetermined and specific on the part of the UAP. It's intentional. Are they trying to kill someone by blasting with radiation to the brain? Or is it something else? Is it a scan of some kind that we're not familiar with? Or are they intentionally trying to do something else? And we're about to find out. Now, there's a speculation by the doctors involved that this could be a weapon of the military, a black project that the other people didn't know about. It was stovepiped, so not everyone knew about this weapon. So they were researching that possibility. That was a microwave weapon. And many of you guys remember that a lot of people were being kicked or being injured at our Cuban embassy and the American embassy. Remember that? They're being injured by these microwaves and having a wide variety of symptoms, from confusion to all sorts of different things, even vision problems, cataracts. These are the same symptoms these UFO exposure people are getting. Yes, they were called UBOs, unexplained bright objects in the brain and causing damage. They're also getting cataracts. People are getting cataracts. I think one of the pieces of information that may come out with Rendlesham is that a group of the people who were exposed to the craft are all going to have the same kind of medical results. They're going to have some sort of damage to their cells, or their immune system, or their biology that is going to be detectable. And I have a feeling that's one of the pieces of information that's going to come out, as well as, of course, the metamaterial that they found, or the, if it is metamaterial, the piece of metal that is labeled Rendlesham that we saw on the slide from Louis Elizondo's speech in Italy. So I think a lot of information is going to be coming out on Rendlesham soon, and I think it's going to be medical, and it's going to be that piece of material, and hopefully we'll get some radar and other stuff as well too. So that's pretty incredible. So they've been studying this group, and it's an experiencer group. It's a bunch of people who've been exposed to UFOs and craft and had experiences. And inside that group, there is a psychic subgroup. Okay, and they notice a repeating pattern of damage in all of those people. But in the psychic subgroup, they notice that there is a area, I guess it's an activated area or something, or damaged area in the right occipital lobe. Okay, so maybe these rays are being pointed at on purpose. They're finding that people with that injury, or whatever that is, to the right occipital lobe have increased accuracy with psychic stuff, remote viewing, essentially. That's the tame way to say it, remote viewing. And it's interesting, there is a doctor named Pershinger who invented this helmet that creates, it's called the God helmet. It creates a rotating kind of field, and it activates different parts of the brain and blah, blah, blah. And to make a long story short, apparently it is able to increase the psychic ability of people. We're going to get to that in a minute. We're going to circle back to that in a minute. But I also want to show and stay with the damaging part for a minute, because there's two sides of this. There's this damaging side, and there's this beneficial side to the brain and possibly this psychic center. So we're going to come back to that psychic center in just a minute, but let's look at some of these other things associated with it. They say that there's this magnetic field. Some of the people who are exploring the God helmet aspect for a moment say that a magnetic field might be able to hold information, and that the Earth's magnetic field might work as a sort of Akashic record. And so that's why they're thinking this God's helmet might work, because they're using magnetic fields to stimulate that same area that is damaged in the MRIs of the contactees. So it's very interesting. But it doesn't take much energy or much microwaves to damage the human brain. They say over 10 hertz can damage the human body. And it's not recommended for anyone to get over 10 hertz. The amazing thing is your microwave oven, when it's unshielded, kicks out 4.6 billion hertz. And above just 10 is bad for you. So imagine how bad it would be for you if you took off the shielding, all of the shielding from your microwave oven. Wow. And basically what it does is it causes a bunch of different types of damage. There's a lot of different types of damage. And in fact, I'm realizing how much in the research of this, how much we are all damaged by the surrounding radiation from all these different devices. Human beings weren't evolved to deal with this kind of damage and this type of radiation. This is a whole new intensity and everything for human cells. And cells are it's living. We're not freaking iron. You know, we are a living organism. And I just want to review a little bit of this with you guys. I'm not talking about 5G, even though that is horrific. Let's just deal with some of the basic numbers and aspects of it, okay? There's extremely low frequency waves. These are power lines, hydro lines, cell phones, you know, mostly office type of equipment, small appliances, very low frequency, you know, cell phones, induction heating, computer terminals. There's regular radio frequencies, which is like, you know, your regular radio and pagers and regular phones and, you know, that sort of thing. And then microwaves, which gets more into radar and navigation and ovens and certain types of cell phones. Then when you get into infrared, it gets into, you know, sunlight and arc welding and different things like that, kick off that kind of non-ionizing radiation. So those are non-ionizing radiation, but even non-ionizing radiations can be harmful. They can kick off, I think what they do is they kick off electrons and not kick off whole atoms. So it's a little better to kick off electrons than the whole atom. So they haven't done studies on a lot of these different types of waves too, gang. We're exposed to a lot of these different waves, these, you know, 50 to 60 hertz ELF waves, these pure sine waves, the square waves, sawtooth waveforms, dirty ELF waves, they're called, ELF modulated waves. There's all sorts of waves that we haven't done the right studies on. But what little studies have been done show that they're toxic, they're immune disrupting, and they're carcinogenic. So that's not a good start. All of those waves are bad for us. They've proven that in study after study. Only incredibly low power waves have been proved to be helpful at all in anything. And that's been in a couple healing studies and a couple growth studies. But those were waves that are oftentimes found in nature too. So it's more understandable. So there's a lot of effects from these waves, and they're kicked off by a lot of different types of machines, guys. And it's kind of stunning how much we're exposed to that's above that 10 hertz. We're exposed to a lot more than 10 hertz. And the FDA says above 10 hertz is damaging. So let's take a quick peek. Wow, like a fluorescent lamp. Wow. These are milligauss. So remember, that's not a hertz. These are milligauss. The recommended safety levels are 0.5 milligauss. And these are way above, way above, as you can see. You can see they're just way. Oops, oopsie doopsie. So I thought you might find the dangers of these waves to be interesting. So the long-term damage to humans and our biology and everything is of great concern about these power waves. We need to insulate them more and do everything. But just the effect of electromagnetic waves in general is very damaging. And there's several UFO cases that have this. There's this famous case in Brazil. It's from 1957, when literally they were attacked by beams in this town. Very highly documented. You can read down here that there were second-degree burns. Lights were blown out. People went unconscious. They collapsed. Emergency circuits were blown out in this military facility. The elevators were all blown out. The intercommunication system was blown out. A lot of interesting things happened at that little military base in Brazil. And there's been other cases where people have been shot with rays. This was another woman who developed a very bad burn on her hand. And they find other biomarkers of being hit by these electromagnetic fields or by any of these beams. Some people are actually hit by beams. So there's lots of these medical symptoms that we've looked at, and cell damage and stuff that they can trace for years. What's interesting is this is some of the people that have been treated. These are high-functioning individuals. Many are prodigious savants, most of whom carry high security clearances. They're members of special forces, members of the intelligence community, employees of aerospace companies, officers in the military, guards of military bases, bivouacs, policemen. Often injuries take place in bivouacs, which is an overnight mission at a secure location for the purpose of guarding reconnaissance or some kind of exploration, which ties exactly to the report that we have of some special forces soldiers, 2 of them, who are stationed at a location where there is repeat UFO activity. They had a craft to go right above them. It was like 75 feet above them. They're bathed in the light of the craft even, and they got sunburns and they got major injuries and cancer and worse. So there's a lot of evidence for this stuff. But there's been numerous doctors who researched this. There's a doctor named Charles Niemczkow. Please, someone help me with that one. And he researched medical injuries from 1979 to 2005. He had a whole list of all the stuff, and it's really fascinating reading to go through that. People have suffered cancers, everything from cancers to cataracts, everything. But now let's go back to the study of these brain injuries, these brain damages. Oh, one quick note. Do you know John Burroughs' medical record is classified? They classified his medical record. He's the Rendlesham Forest officer who's exposed to the AAV, and he had a lot of health problems, and but they wouldn't give him his own medical records because they proved exposure to radiation and all these things that they didn't want that information to come out. So in the name of national security, they endangered this gentleman's life, this soldier's life who served our country, and that's despicable. Anyway, I'm not sure if he ever got all of his records or not. But anyway, so this broadband radiation is interesting, but there also is that specific place in the brain that they've been trying to activate with Dr. Pershinger's coil Shiva circumcerebral complex magnetic stimulation headset. Woo! Say that 10 times fast. Basically, this device has been apparently embraced by people at the highest level and the Department of Defense, apparently. Apparently, this device has been embraced, and has been embraced by a lot of the big top scientists that we're aware of and that research this stuff, and that those of you who do a lot of UFO research know exactly the people I'm talking about. So this is pretty amazing. Dr. Pershinger's God helmet really does some amazing things. Out-of-body experiences. People are having incredible experiences, and when done in a certain way, as they say, it increases theta waves and elicits out-of-body experiences. It is also said and rumored that these helmets vastly, like by 20 to 30%, increase the accuracy of remote viewing. Well, what do you guys think? That's a lot to chew here. One is the dangerous effects of these craft. I think it's pretty indisputable, but do you guys think it's an intentional attack? Intentional when people get injured, or do you think it's strictly accidental? And next, do you think they are using a ray of some kind to activate certain experiencers' area of the brain that this device also activates or mimics? Do you think this device even works at all? Well, a lot to chew on here, gang. Much love to you and yours.